Hello, my name is Jeff Chamberlain. I'm the current president of the American Society for Gene and Cell Therapy, and I'm a professor of neurology at the University of Washington School of Medicine in Seattle, Washington. So I'm excited to be here today to talk about some of the highlights of the gene therapy field over the past year and also discuss some of the things that we're excited to hear about in the coming year. The things that stood out for me were that we saw an ever greater number of new and emerging gene therapies come about. Not only basic research advances that we're seeing in the study of new diseases and new animal models, but especially in clinical interventions. More and more gene therapies are going into the clinic, and what's really exciting is that many of those are starting to be approved and approved at an accelerated basis. My own research in my lab is focused on the muscular dystrophies. So of course, it was very exciting for me to see the first ever approval of a gene therapy for muscular dystrophy. In fact, the gene therapy that was approved last May by the FDA was for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and it used an AAV vector, and was at the time only the fifth AAV gene therapy approved so far. And so that's really exciting. We also saw a lot of important advances in understanding the immune responses against gene therapy vectors, particularly in muscle. And I think this has been an issue that's really been slowing down the field in terms of rolling out new interventions against the muscular dystrophies. One of the unique things about muscle gene transfer is that the human body is 40% muscle. It's a very large target area, and you have to use especially high doses of AAV vectors in order to target new genes to muscle. So it's been a challenge. We've seen some more issues arise in the muscle field than in some of the other fields, but we're really learning a lot, and there's been exciting progress. And in particular, there have been some great breakthroughs in developing a whole new class, and in fact, several new classes of AAV vectors, which are very useful for targeting solid organs, particularly muscle. And we're also seeing an increasing understanding of what types of immune responses can arise in some of the patients, and what are the best approaches to immune modulation. Getting outside of my own area, the other highlights in the field over the last year for me included in increasingly potent advances against various blood cancers, particularly using the various CAR T cell therapies. I mean, that's an area that's been really exciting and is really moving along rapidly. And then, of course, the year closed out with the incredibly exciting announcement of the first gene therapies for sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia, which also brought in another approval for gene editing technologies, which is a really an important area of progress. One of the gene therapies that was approved for sickle cell disease is very dependent on CRISPR technologies. And I think this is really going to set up a lot of additional advancements over the next year. CRISPR is obviously an incredibly important tool for the future of many gene therapy approaches. And its current application in the clinic has primarily been to try to target hematopoietic or blood stem cells. I'm really hopeful, though, that the breakthroughs that we're seeing with stem cell modification is going to help accelerate the application of these techniques to somatic tissue gene therapies as well. The stem cell applications have been somewhat easier to apply. They allow for faster assessment of safety and effectiveness. But I'm hopeful we're going to begin to see more widespread application to many other diseases, and perhaps someday even to the muscular dystrophies, because there's a lot of work going on in that area as well. And in my opinion, one of the key things we need to focus on is a better understanding of immune responses and how to control those. And a lot of progress is being made in that area, and I think we're going to see major breakthroughs in the coming year. One of the key things, again, that I referred to a little while ago is that particular applications require very high dose vector delivery, particularly to try to target some of the solid organs in the body, especially muscle. And these very high doses tend to be associated with serious adverse events in some patients, but fortunately not in most of those. But we need to develop a better understanding of which patients develop these issues and how to modulate the response against these vectors. Learning more about the precise pathways that are involved in the development of both innate and acquired immune responses, and how to control them for immediate safety and efficacy. The other issue that is somewhat related to that is the whole issue of being able to re-administer a gene therapy vector. I think this is going to be critical for long-term efficacy, and it varies a lot from one disease to another. Obviously, we need to have a better understanding of the long-term durability of different gene therapies, and that's something that's dependent both on the tissue you're trying to target as well as the nature of the disease itself, how severe it is, how easily you can correct it, and things of that nature. And I think the progress that's been made over the last few years has been incredible, and it's going to lead to additional breakthroughs and really exciting progress over the coming year. And hopefully, as Peter Marks has said many times, I think we're going to be seeing a great increase in the number of approved gene therapies, and that's going to have a very significant impact on patients and human health for a variety of different diseases that are of interest to our entire community. So that's my take on the past year and what I'm looking forward to in the future. And thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Peter Marks, Director of the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. We are the center that regulates cell and gene therapies. And I was asked to talk about several questions related to what has been going on in 2023 and what's going to go on in 2024. 2023 saw the approval of 5 gene therapy products, including the first stem cell-based gene therapy manufactured using CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing technology for the treatment of individuals with sickle cell disease. That's remarkable because that technology was only essentially described just over a decade previously. In addition, there were several cellular therapeutic products approved as well, including the first allogeneic pancreatic islet cells for the management of certain individuals with diabetes mellitus. And with those very positive developments noted, I think it's quite an exciting time, but I would be remiss if I didn't temper that enthusiasm with the fact that there are still some challenges in the area of the development of gene therapy for very small populations that have led to some products being dropped from development. And that's something that we're working with partners at FDA and outside of FDA to try to do something about by putting in place various programs to hopefully help move those products forward in development. Now, one of the programs that we're going to use more widely to address the issue that I just noted of products falling out of development is the leaning in to the use of accelerated approval for rare diseases when appropriate. And we've now used accelerated approval for 2 gene therapy products for rare diseases, and it represents a really crucial tool in our regulatory toolbox to help move, to really help more efficiently advance development of gene therapies for rare diseases. Essentially, what we're doing when we're using accelerated approval in this setting is leveraging the science underlying genetic medicine through the use of biomarkers, and sometimes that just happens to be the gene product that's being given. So that allows us to measure the levels, for instance, of a gene therapy protein product in a relevant tissue and allows us to correlate it with what we would see in an animal model or in a human affected in part by the disease, and see whether we can achieve levels that are essentially equivalent to the setting where people are not affected significantly by a disease. In other words, it fulfills our requirements for an endpoint reasonably likely to predict clinical benefit. And so I think this is an exciting time to be able to lean into this. We still have to see confirmatory trials in the end, but if we can help products for rare diseases get to an approval sooner, we'll help more people and will hopefully keep these therapies viable commercially so that we will see more products come through and ultimately be able to help patients, and ultimately then within several years after coming to market with an accelerated approval, convert over to full or traditional approvals, as they're called. You know, from my perspective, 2023 will be the year that we realized that we need to do at least 3 things together to accelerate the development of gene therapies for very small populations. First of all, we need to make full use of our platform technologies provision that was put into law in 2023. And that will allow us, hopefully, to move through more gene therapy products and be able to see more people helped by this technology. Second, we really have to come to better global regulatory convergence so that we don't have to have regulatory rework each time a sponsor goes to a new country with a very small indication for a gene therapy, because that's currently creating a situation where by products that could be commercially viable if you had a larger population consisting of multiple countries are not commercially viable in one country alone. So if we can address that, that should help things. And then finally, I truly believe that what we've learned over the past years during the COVID-19 pandemic about the importance of communication between sponsors and FDA and how it can facilitate development, this can be applied to rare disease gene therapy development. And so this year we'll be running a pilot program to see if increased communication can actually help advance development of the rare disease gene therapy products significantly. I think altogether these things will hopefully help us bring these products through clinical development to the benefit of patients more rapidly, and thus help us change people's lives. So thank you very much for having me today, and look forward to an exciting 2024 ahead.